Hello, and welcome to the back room, where we talk about politics in New York, across the country, and around the world. I'm Lisa Schiffren, a Republican speechwriter.
I'm David Eisenbach, presidential historian.
So, David, I don't know what else we could possibly talk about besides Joe Biden's astonishing pardon of his son Hunter for any possible crime committed, known, unknown, in the last 11 years. What do you think?
As a Democrat, I'm getting tired of having to defend this, you know?
It's only been 3 days.
But it's part of this pattern. For years, Joe Biden's been talking about how democracy's on trial and that electing Trump means cronyism and being above the law. And now we get Hunter Biden with this blanket pardon for crimes that we still don't even know exactly what he did, that allegedly, according to Joe Biden, he was totally innocent of. And now we get this pardon so that we're never going to get the truth, or it's going to take years for it to come out.
Yeah, somebody said in 2020, Joe Biden swore that that Hunter's laptop wasn't real. And in 2024, he pardoned him for everything on the laptop. So I think that's where you want to look for your crime. There's a great book called The Laptop from Hell by Miranda Devine that spells out all of the money laundering and influence peddling that Hunter was up to with the Chinese, with the Romanians, with the Ukrainians.
And if we look at the timeline of this blanket pardon, it starts with January 2014, and Hunter gets a job with Burisma in April 2014.
For $1 million a year.
For $1 million a year with
for nothing.
No background whatsoever in the oil and natural gas business. And look, when there's smoke like that, there's generally fire. And
well, remember Joe used to tell that story about being in Ukraine and threatening to withhold U.S. aid if they didn't fire Shokin, their general counsel. I forget what exactly the title was, but the guy whose job it was to look into the crimes of Burisma.
Yeah. And people sort of, we now have this fantasy that Ukraine was a thriving democracy before Russia invaded. It wasn't. It was infamous for its corruption and the control of the oligarchs, and Burisma was at the center of all of this corruption. Right. And now Joe Biden has brought that corruption right back home, making us look like a banana republic to the rest of the world. And it's shameful because that's the same thing that he's been accusing Donald Trump of doing, and now he's done it himself.
But I will say, it's hard to imagine a father not pardoning a son. I wouldn't care if it were just about the guns and the tax avoidance. The fact that there's all this corruption and influence peddling involved is what offends me. But
and it directly involves American national security and potentially Joe Biden himself with his actions as vice president. I mean, influence peddling. You got more than one person involved here.
Right.
In order for Hunter Biden to earn his pay, he'd have to get his father somehow involved.
As he did. There's all this evidence of all these meetings and dinners that Joe attended.
None of which we'll be able to find out. I mean, unless maybe Congress opens
I'm telling
up
you,
an investigation.
Miranda Devine has a new book that spells out all of it.
Well, look, we're never going to get justice done here. It's entirely over. And again, when you're running on this idea that democracy is at stake, that we have to defend the republic, and then you turn around with this blanket pardon. It used to be that presidential pardons didn't come unless you were truly contrite, you admitted your crime, and then maybe you did some good to rehabilitate yourself and give to others.
I think that's a little bit romantic. Mark Rich.
No, that he was terrible. Yeah, of course. Mark Rich, Charles Kushner.
Right.
Let's not forget that
No,
at
no.
the same time that
I think there have been many cases where somebody got paid off to.
well, I understand, but that again, the it directly involving the family like this, and it's dirty. And Charles Kushner now, Donald Trump appointing him to be U.S. ambassador to France, to Paris. I mean this is again, it makes us look like we're a joke of a republic, like we don't really have a democracy anymore. And I'm sick of trying to defend it, trying to defend the Democrats. It's shameful all around. Neither party is innocent. And you're absolutely right. I mean, this corruption's been going on a long time, but, at least you got to have a pretense of some sort of justice system.
No, it's true. As a Republican, it would make me happy if Democrats got off their high horse about being the party of democracy and virtue. The fact that they believe that Joe Biden is virtuous when he's been a sleazy senator for 50 years before he became a sleazy vice president. It's remarkable what people will believe when they want to.
And especially when you look at his record regarding being tough on crime, how that has resulted in many people, mainly people of color, being thrown into prison, and that now he just gives this blanket pardon to his son. I've taught in prison, and when you commit a drug crime that also involves a gun, they throw the book at you. And so there are plenty of people in federal prison right now guilty of the same crimes that Hunter Biden is, and that they're still locked up, and they're not getting a pardon from Dad.
No, they're not. I guess there's no, Hunter's privilege is so astonishing that there's no getting around it.
There's no getting around it. And to go out on this note, I'm not shocked that Biden gave this pardon, but it definitely is.
It seems inevitable. I mean, I would, when his press secretary says he made up his mind to do this over the weekend, I find that an unnecessary lie. It's clear this has been the plan all along.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, and the fact is that he's promising. He said when asked before the election, "Would you pardon Hunter?" He said no, he's not going to do it, and he totally flipped. And there's no doubt this
but
was already
the fact that liberal media, the corporate media, believed him when he said he wasn't going to pardon Hunter, that was some combination of naive and stupid. Just plain, straight out. How could you believe this? How could you take this seriously?
Yeah, well,
Aren't you offended that he made a fool of you?
The shamelessness of the Democratic Party it seems to have no bounds, and betraying any ideals, whether it's on the foreign policy front, domestic policy front, it's hard to defend. And I'm not the only Democrat who's fed up at this point.
No, I can't imagine you are. I mean, there have been plenty of statements by a couple of journalists, people like Nate Silver, saying that any Democrat that doesn't denounce this within 48 hours, nobody should vote for them in 2028. I think that is actually kind of funny. So there have been plenty of statements by people who are offended and horrified.
Look, for the Democrats to get back into power, we've got to clean up our act. And this just adds fuel to the fire and the notion that we are a party of the rich. We don't really care about the poor and the middle class. And we're kind of a hopeless wreck. Riding on the fumes of past glories in which we fought the good fight, and now we're just there to serve the interests of the wealthy. That is not a way for us to get back into power.
Right, it used to be the wealthy and the underclass, but the underclass seems to have been written off.
And mocked and dismissed and called racist and all sorts of names, deplorables. And again,
no, the deplorables are me. That's just middle class Trump supporters.
Well, yeah, but this is my point. By cozying up to the our own oligarchs and the oligarchs of other countries, and then dismissing the true concerns of the middle class and the working class, this has resulted in a catastrophe for the Democratic Party, and it doesn't seem like we've learned any lessons from either 2016 or 2024.
No, I think that's right. And on a concrete level today, that was kind of actualized by Joe Biden giving Ukraine $75 million for nothing, whereas the people of North Carolina are living in tents and got $750 each.
Isn't it amazing how the Democrats they can always find, and that's not just the Democrats, Republicans too, always find money for war. It's always there, right? But try to actually do something for Americans, and all of a sudden now we got to worry about the deficit and the budget. But yeah, it's really amazing. You know, you follow all these allotments of cash that go out. You know, remember the time when they found that $6 billion suddenly appeared because of an accounting error for Ukraine to hand that over? This war that even the people of Ukraine, right? Zelensky himself even says we're going to have to give up territory. He just reversed himself.
Zelensky really did just reverse himself. He all of a sudden looks as if he understands that Donald Trump is serious about negotiating peace ASAP.
And he also understands that he's losing.
Well, he also understands that the price of this loss is going to be in land.
Well, it's the only way in which to bring some peace here. And can you imagine if you were in a trench somewhere in eastern Ukraine and all of a sudden Zelensky flips on you like this, that the very territory that you're going to die for suddenly is going to be part of the negotiation? Right? I mean, what does that do to morale? Well, I'll tell you what it does. Right now, there are 60,000 deserters who are in the Ukrainian justice system. 60,000 guys who have just fled the front lines. It's a crumbling army, and Joe Biden's decision to just keep on throwing money at the problem is not going to do anything to solve it. It's just going to get bloodier, and more people are going to die needlessly.
No, it looks as if he's throwing money very deliberately to set Trump up, but he knows Trump's not going to throw money. So he's just throwing as much as he can before he leaves. But I think things will change in 40 days or however long it is.
Hey, look, I'll believe it when I see it, and I hope you're right.
You know what was interesting along those lines? Trump's astonishing tweet to Hamas telling them that the minute he's elected, if they haven't turned over the hostages, all hell will break loose.
Well, I think all hell has already broken loose.
No, but he literally said the United States will attack you like you've never been attacked before.
No, I understand, but that's not going to save the lives of the hostages. I think the United States needs to start putting pressure on Israel. And Netanyahu is not Israel. Netanyahu's approval ratings in Israel are like less than 20%. That there are other leaders that need to step up. If he had an election today, he'd lose.
He might lose, but he is in fact the elected leader of a democracy.
When was the last time they had an election?
2 years ago, 3 years ago.
But what I'm saying is, right now, if he were to run, he wouldn't win. And the majority of the Israelis are done with him.
That's not true.
What do you mean it's not true?
He's got plenty of backers.
19% popular approval rating in Israel right now. He's not a popular figure. They think he's undermined their democracy, which he has. And
I don't see that at all.
He's got them into this war, which there were opportunities.
No, he didn't get them into this war. Hamas got them into this war.
This war, which has just escalated. I mean, Israel's standing
It's escalated
with the entire,
because
wait a second. We're talking 45,000 dead in Gaza. The vast majority of them, 2/3, are women and children.
Oh, that's not true. The vast majority of them are actually fighters. They're terrorists.
Come on, Lisa.
No,
Lisa,
I believe that.
The civilian death toll is off the
You're taking
hook.
your numbers from the Hamas Medical Bureau as opposed to...
Actually, they're from the New York Times, but...
Which gets them from Hamas.
If that's the way
No, they're
we're going
honest about that. They admit that that's where they get them.
Well, who else is counting the dead? Who else is counting the starving?
But Hamas lies. They don't ever not lie. They always lie.
When Gaza has been cut off from the rest of the world, and bombed repeatedly. Not only they're bombing hospitals, they're bombing areas where civilians have been told to gather for safety. This is a crime.
You know, the Israelis have actually done something astonishing. There's essentially a 1-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio of who's died. One civilian for every combatant. That sounds like a lot, but the standard ratios for the United States, for instance, in Iraq, in Mosul, were on the order of 5 dead civilians.
That's why I find it hard to believe, right? That when you're bombing cities,
the Israelis have been very
you're
careful.
Not targeting and able to target
Well,
the
they've done a pretty good job. You know what? We're going to have to take a break. Please stay with us while we go to our PSA, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Back to the back room, where we talk about politics in New York, across the country, and around the world. So, David, what do you think of the nomination of Pete Hegseth to be Secretary of Defense?
The job is too big for him. That was clear from the very beginning. And now we're starting to get all these stories of scandals. I don't think he's got any chance of being confirmed.
I don't know. I think he will actually. I think it'll be close. He may or may not make it, but he's doing pretty well with Republicans in the Senate. He's been going around talking to them, and people are acting enthusiastic. But it's true, there's a little scandal there. He appears to have spent a few years drinking too much and being a little handsy with the ladies.
Yeah. And you were bringing up earlier this other story about his veterans, the group for veterans, this charity event. What was that story again?
Yeah, he may not have done such a great job running the bank accounts of the group that he worked for. And of course, the Department of Defense has a very, very big budget, so that would be a little bit of a problem.
It's a massive budget, and it is something that needs to be wrangled. I mean, I think somebody needs to go in there with a fine-tooth comb and cut out all the waste because,
Well, that's what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to do.
Yeah. No, I say great. I think they could find a ton of waste. I mean, the fact is the Defense Department just failed its 7th audit.
Right. They lose billions.
They lose billions, right?
The one thing I think Hegseth would be good at, I think he'd be really good at making the Department of Defense unwoke taking away all of this garbage that's been thrown at our soldiers, turning them all into rainbow warriors instead of actual warriors. I think he'd be good at that. He's written about that. He knows a lot about it. That might not be who you want to be your actual Secretary of Defense, but it's an important task. We have a big problem with young men not volunteering now because the department has become too feminized. There's no two ways about this. Putting, trans officers up as poster boys is ridiculous. It keeps the kind of young men who would normally volunteer from volunteering, and we've got to change that.
It's a job that requires a lot more than what his skills have to bear, and I find it kind of hard to believe that he's going to survive this Senate confirmation.
Well, we'll see. Kash Patel, on the other hand, is getting a lot of negative feedback from Democrats, but Republicans love him. He's got a pretty good resume. He's run a bunch of things. He was the chief of staff at the Defense Department. He was the deputy director of the National Intelligence Council. He's done a bunch of things at the National Security Council, revamping the FBI, which has clearly gotten out of control. I think that's actually a good job for him.
Look, he was investigated by the FBI, and so he's very familiar with that. An investigation that, as far as I know, didn't really come to anything.
Right.
And I think, look, the FBI is still J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. It's in the DNA of this institution. I think any American who isn't skeptical about the FBI, among other federal agencies, you don't know the history. And so anyone who could come in and get rid of some of the secrecy and the targeting of political enemies, I think is a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing for democracy, and bringing some transparency to the FBI, I think, would be a great thing.
I can't believe you said that, and I think that's great. I think it's totally true. I think it's become so politicized. They've used it against Catholic school parents, against people who objected at county meetings to educational things in their students' schools. Making parents into terrorists. The FBI has clearly been way too politicized.
Yeah, and again, there's nothing new here. This is, what they label domestic extremism today would have been labeled communism in the J. Edgar Hoover days. And it's this blanket accusation that then justifies them now looking through everything, your entire life, to find something, maybe even to leak it to get you fired. These are incredible powers. And then when you layer in the incredible powers of investigation with secrecy and then an agenda, this is a recipe to undermine democracy. So bringing transparency to the FBI, I'm entirely in favor of it.
Me too. There we are.
There we are.
So Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, wants to Trump-proof California. Do we really think that's what Californians want? Many of them voted for Trump too.
Yeah. Well, what's his plan? What's he want to do to Trump-proof California? Has he gotten specific about it?
Two things he's been specific about are not letting ICE detain and expel illegal aliens,
Okay.
A, and B, he's going to protect abortion as if abortion is threatened.
Yeah, yeah. We've talked about this before, about the importance of there being cooperation in order to go after gangs, for example, among the migrants who are terrorizing migrant communities and immigrant communities. You're going to need the cooperation of local authorities. And so, Gavin Newsom standing up and saying that it's going to be resistance, I think kind of does not bode well. In the meantime, Eric Adams is reaching out to Trump. And what did you think of that move?
I thought that was actually very interesting. I think Eric Adams is in trouble. He's in trouble politically and legally, and he's in trouble because he complained about what the migrants were doing to New York City, budget-wise and safety-wise. And he understands that Trump is with him in this and that this has got to get fixed. And I think he's ready to back down off of his, we have to be a sanctuary city beliefs. I think that was what was in place and he took it on, but I don't think that's his natural stance. I think we're going to see him move away from that as criminals start getting deported and costs start coming down. Yeah. Apparently there are 8 or 9 shelters that have closed in New York City since Trump was elected, which is a lot in a month.
Yeah, it's almost sort of baffling how we built all these shelters and it's almost like overnight it got kind of fixed. It's kind of, I find it hard to believe, right? I mean, we closed down the Randall's Island shelter, I'm not even sure how much it was actually used. I know that there were lots of problems out there.
Right, I think the migrants didn't like it.
They didn't like it. Look, I think the only way that the right people, I'm talking about the gangs, get targeted is through cooperation between local authorities and the federal authorities. And I think that Eric Adams, both for practical reasons and politically, he's going to be running for mayor for re-election. And I think he's got a field of candidates to the left of him. If he runs to the right, I think that he sees a path to victory there. So I think for political reasons as well as his own beliefs, reaching across the aisle to Trump is a smart move on his part.
It is smart, and it's so unexpected. And Trump has vowed to help New York, so who knows, maybe it will bear fruit. It remains to be seen if he can get to the right of Andrew Cuomo.
Well, this is it's heating up right now, all the buzz around Andrew Cuomo jumping in the race. Already he's being attacked by Scott Stringer and others who are in the race. I think Andrew's playing it cool. Why jump in, right? As soon as you jump in the race, you got to hire a ton of staff. It's a lot of money. He doesn't have to worry about name recognition. He's going to raise a ton of dollars. So the longer he stays out, the better it is for him. I think he's going to wait until after Christmas and then in the dead season of politics, jump right into the race.
Well, that'd be interesting. The primary is in June, so there isn't that much time.
Again, he doesn't have to worry about fundraising and he doesn't have to worry about name recognition. He could jump in at the last minute and win in that fractured Democratic primary race.
Well, that's about it for tonight. Thank you.
All right, we covered it all from the world to the local
The only thing we forgot is that Donald Trump is going to see the revived Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris this weekend. And the Pope can't be bothered to show up.
Look, they did a remarkable job, without doubt. But part of my heart, remembering the old Notre Dame, it had kind of a feel, it had a
1,000 years of soot.
1,000 years of soot. To see it gone, it hurts, but they did a great job restoring it.
Okay, thank you and good night. Please join us in 2 weeks when we're back for more Backroom.